Looking at Mr. Jim Davis, previously mentioned, 6-0 with Jund mid-range, and he's going to be accompanied in the feature match area by Mr. Austin Collins playing Team or Climb. A little bit different look this round, not quite the decks we've seen. Obviously, these players have been around the feature match area, but it's not the Golgari stuff, it's not Mono Red, it's not all these decks we're talking about. These are a little bit different takes on the format.
Yeah, both these players had time-shifted matches the last couple rounds. I got to watch Austin dismantle Dylan Hand on Bant Nexus, and his deck looked fast, powerful, sort of Gruul-ish, more Simic with some red cards.
Yeah, so Austin's leading off with the classic opener of Llanowar Elves. You see Jim Davis respond with a topped Blood Crypt.
Yeah, it looked like all of Austin's Llanowar Elves were different pictures.
Points for troll value, for sure. You know, the first alpha card I ever owned was a Llanowar Elves. It was like 1996. I love Llanowar Elves. I got excited. I upgraded my normal copies to an alpha for probably like $2.
And obviously you still have that, and now you're a millionaire.
Do I look smart to you, Jerry? I no longer have.
You look smart in that suit, Brian.
Well, thank you. So Austin Collins continuing to develop his board as we complement each other. It looks like we have our Druid getting ready to produce some mana, as well as a Jade Light Ranger. Austin Collins, though, one forest.
One forest, but had 2 mana creatures in the opening hand, and it looks like Jim Davis is kind of going for broke here. Had the Chain Whirler, saving it until next turn for a combo with the Status Statue, and I would imagine that Austin knows what Jim is up to. Maybe, you know, the lands help give it away too.
Right.
So he's got to be careful here. There's not a whole lot that Teamer can do to interact with that combo.
Austin's going to deploy his Branch Walker here. Going to get a counter, putting Llanowar Elves in the graveyard. And we're going to get in there with Jade Light Ranger for 4 points, bringing Jim down to 16. Austin Collins does have a second land in the form of Root Brown Crag. I'm sure he's very excited to see that. But as you said, Jim Davis up to something. Something's a brewing on that side of the board.
And this is exactly the type of matchup, like when you build basically what amounts to a mono red mid-range deck, but you double splash, there's got to be a good reason for it, and Status Statue in combination with Chain Whirler against base green decks is exactly what you want.
Look at this. Jim still not satisfied to decimate his opponent's board, going instead with the Rekindling Phoenix here and letting Austin have a turn to develop a little bit more.
Well, the Llanowar Elf didn't attack, so that's kind of suspect. Got to wonder what Austin's up to with that. But maybe Jim just thinks that this board is not good enough to wipe up. Like, Austin is going to need to tap out to do something powerful. Rekindling Phoenix brick walls the Jade Light Ranger for the most part, and Austin doesn't have a whole lot of things that he can pressure him with, so this seems fine to me.
Yeah.
Good. A lot of patience by Jim.
Yeah. And that's certainly a key trait of playing these mid-range decks effectively. So we see Austin Collins deploy a Steam Vents there, untapped. Going to take a little damage from that, fall to 18, and pass the turn back. I think both these players are kind of a little suspect of their opponents right now, thinking about what could be going on on the other side of the table.
A lot of posturing going on.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Austin has the obvious 5-mana thing, which is Adapt Incubation Druid, but also has the added benefit of being able to potentially respond to what Jim is doing. It is kind of awkward to, pass the turn with your Incubation Druid and then have it die to like a shock or something when you go to adapt it, but Austin deciding that is worth the risk.
Who do you think benefits from this slower pace of play right now? What deck is more favored as the game goes long?
Likely Jim. It is kind of hard to say because Austin has Hydroid Crassus in his deck, but at the same time, if he's not developing his mana base, eventually the Chain Whirler Status combo is going to take out all those creatures. Austin's going to have only a few lands left, but now this is interesting. Got Skargan Hellkite with a counter on it. Incubation Druid also gets adapted. And now Austin has a lot of mana to work with.
Yeah, interesting state this game has found itself in. Jim with an extremely powerful play in the form of Skargan Hellkite with a counter on it, meaning he'll be able to unlock that damage-based ability that Skargan Hellkite adds to the mix. But you see Austin tapping a bunch of mana here and looking at Vivian Reed. Dealing with the Hellkite, a clean exchange.
As far as answers to Skargan Hellkite are concerned, that is among the best of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And And Austin's going to get in there for some damage now, looking to finally make a play into this game and start putting Jim on the back foot a little bit.
Yeah, Jim down to 6. Maybe being a little too patient. Maybe he should have actually pulled the trigger last turn with the Chain Whirler status.
So it looks like Jim is finally ready to pull the trigger. I'm going to tell you something, too. Austin Collins has Spell Pierce in his hand.
Yeah.
And no window to play it with the way Jim has played this game. Until now, he's going to get the treasure map. But look, he would have much rather been able to get that status.
Yeah, people kind of made fun of this combo when it came out, where it's like, oh, you only have 4 of each card. It's not really consistent. Your opponents need to primarily be playing creature decks. And, well, if they are, this is among one of the best things you can possibly be doing.
Right, I've never really bought into that description of the combo because I just think Statue is a good card. Like, Jim Davis is happy to have access to the backside of that card, be able to deal with problematic enchantments, problematic creatures at 4 mana. It's not the most efficient answer, but it does everything his deck wants.
No, it's definitely true. Whether or not it's worth a double splash or playing like this big red style of deck, it's tough to say, but definitely the combo in a shell like this, in a format full of mid-range green decks, like it's not surprising to see why Jim is 6-0.
So we saw Austin rebuild a little bit, but Jim was able to follow up with an additional Skargan Hellkite, and that was enough for Austin Collins, going to pick up the cards, call it a day, and move on to game 2. And we're going to go to the sideboards here. Jim Davis's sideboard: 4 Duress, 4 Fountain of Renewal, 3 Cinder Vines, 2 Eldest Reborn, 1 Karn Scion of Urza, and a Dire Fleet Daredevil. Jerry, what do you like here from Jim Davis's deck?
Respect for the 4 Fountain of Renewal. I don't like him in this matchup,
Right.
but certainly cares about beating up on mono red decks. Not a whole lot of stuff to help here. I mean, the Duresses are obviously good against the Teferi / Nexus decks. Fountain of Renewal good against the mono red decks. Cinder Vine's another card for Turbo Fog-esque things. And then you have some cards that are good against fighting mid-range mirrors like Eldest Reborn Karn and Direfleet Daredevil. And not a whole lot of things that are good at cleaning up like mid-range green creatures. But I think his main deck is pretty well set up to handle that sort of thing. So you might see some Eldest Reborns, maybe a Karn, but the rest of this stuff doesn't really belong.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty light touch here for Jim Davis. I think he did most of his work against this archetype in the main deck. So we're going to look at Austin Collins' sideboard. He's presenting 4 Lava Coil, 3 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Cinder Vines, 2 Fight with Fire, 2 Negate, 1 Crushing Canopy, and 1 River's Rebuke. Jerry, what do you like here?
So there's a River's Rebuke in the main deck also, which I have to imagine is just incredible in green mirrors, but not really great against what Jim is doing, only presenting like 1 large threat at a time for the most part. So Austin might want some Lava Coils to clean out those Rekindling Phoenixes. It did look like Jim was mostly playing Hellkites as a 5/5, so maybe you don't want to overload on Lava Coils, but bringing in a couple might be good. Disdainful Stroke tags a lot of the relevant stuff, but not everything. Fight with Fire can help kill some threats and also gives you a way to close out the game, but I really wouldn't want any of the negates or anything like that.
Right, I agree with you. Hopefully you've had a chance to look through these deck lists via Cardboard Live thus far, and if you see anything you like here, I recommend you go check out Star City Games' sale. Star City Games Magic the Gathering sale. There's big savings on hundreds of items, and it does end Monday, so you're going to head over there, check it out at go.starcitygames.com/sale. Obviously, the finest in Dragon Skull Summits, Forks, Japanese Deranged Hermits, and Urza's Mines.
OG Urza's Mines.
Yeah, I love those Urza's Mines. They're in my Tron deck.
Okay.
I have the OGs. I will always have the OGs.
Do they all match?
Oh yeah, they all match.
Smart.
Yeah.
I have some Italian like black bordered 4th ones, like the Renaissance ones.
Okay, that's a nice one.
Those have been good. I've had those since 2011 or so.
Have you ever played them?
Yeah, dude. When Modern first started, I played Blue White Tron all the time.
Oh, that's right. I remember talking with you quite a bit about that deck back in the day, and I also played it, and it was quite good. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
I'm surprised you said that. Most people have had the opposite reaction.
No. You first of all, you know my type, right?
Yeah.
Well, most people might have the opposite reaction. I love that style of deck, the big mana control-ish type deck. You're talking right up my alley.
That is actually one of the decks I get asked about the most. They're like, "Yo, do you have an updated Blue White Tron list?" And it's like, man, I haven't played that in almost a decade, but
right.
then it gets the wheels turning, and it's like, ooh, Ugin came out. You can gifts for that and a Haven of the Spirit Dragon, but no, it's not It's not anywhere good.
What Jerry's not telling you is that I'm the one who asks him, does he have an update for that deck? On
You're one of many.
almost a daily basis. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at Jim Davis's player slide. You see Jim on your screen there, age 34, hailing to us from Long Island, New York. I'm also a Long Island guy. Props to Jim Davis there. 2018 SCG Tour. He's got 19 opens played and 3 open top 8s. Pretty good record there. All time, we're looking at 16 open top 8s. That's a lot of top 8s with 2 wins and 3 invitational top 8s as well. Obviously one of the mainstays of the SCG Tour. Jim was a college roller hockey player at Stony Brook University. Still plays hockey and golf to this day. I didn't know colleges had roller hockey team.
I didn't know
roller hockey.
Like maybe when I was a kid, but like, does that even count? It certainly wasn't like college official or anything.
Right. Yeah, I think I played a little roller hockey in my youth. Haven't picked it up in a while. As fans of our podcast might know, I'm a little injury prone these days. Probably should avoid the roller hockey games.
Likely, and I should too, just because I'm clumsy and pretty stupid. So would probably fall over and hurt myself. I'd be right there with you.
Yeah. So it looks like Jim is not satisfied with that opening 7. He's going to throw it back in the deck, look for a better 6, and it seems like Austin going to stay pat on 7. Austin obviously not playing Modern this week. We'll have to see what he comes back with now that his beloved Ironworks deck has bit the big one. That's it, no more Ironworks. Are you sad to see Ironworks leave the Modern format?
Not really. This Ironworks was one of the decks that I never really picked up and never really learned, but generally understood how it operated and had a fairly good record against it overall.
Okay.
But as far as the health of Modern and the health of Modern tournament coverage, I support the fact that KCI is now gone. And I think people like Austin will be all right. Austin is, the spiky grinder type who is basically just willing to pick up whatever the best deck is.
Right. I don't think he found Ironworks because it suited his playstyle. I think he found it because he thought it was the best deck. So we've obviously started game number 2 here, and we're off to the races with the Merfolk Branchwalker from Austin Collins, revealing Vivian. That's going to go to the graveyard. Jim untaps, takes his turn, draws a treasure map for the turn. It's a nice little draw to have on turn 2. We'll see if he wants to deploy that or maybe clean up the board a little bit. Looks like it's going to be treasure map.
When your deck is all big monsters and spot removal spells, treasure map is among one of the best cards that you can possibly play in your deck.
Oh yeah, for sure. Seeing Merfolk Branchwalker rumble into the red zone, dealing 3 points of damage to Jim Davis. He falls to 17. Austin Collins going to tap 2 mana, and we have a Wild Growth Walker. See, again, that's that same misplay we keep seeing people make. You play the Wild Growth Walker first. We're going to have a clinic on this after we finish commentating today.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful, actually.
Yeah, it seems like it.
But Austin has the Steam Vents open, bluffing a potential Spell Pierce. I say bluffing, but we don't know if he actually has it.
He may have it. He may have the goods here. So let's see what Jim wants to do.
It's kind of great because he only has 1 copy in his main deck and none in his sideboard, but he got to show it to Jim in game 1.
Right.
Now Jim has to just live in fear of it.
Yeah, that's good equity right there. And if you're browsing through Austin's list over on Cardboard Live, you see he's got a few fun ofs floating in there. There we see Jim unloading a Lava Coil. Jim's a little mana light here. Important he controls the board for as long as possible. And he recognizes that, firing off the Lava Coil at the Wild Growth Walker. See Austin, no such mana problems, tapping 2 mana. And he's got the Druid hitting the battlefield.
Looks like he's got basically nothing but mana.
Yeah.
Which is awkward after bidding that Vivian off the Branchwalker Explorer on turn 2. He did not look happy about that either.
It's a good payoff for a lot of mana. So here's Jim scrying in his upkeep, using that to find a 3rd land drop in the form of Basic Mountain. I think we'll see that deployed here. We'll see if he wants to use it to clean up any of the creatures on board. He can shock. Looks like 2 shocks in Jim's hand right now, so we'll see what he wants to do in this next main phase. He is going to fire off a shock at the Incubation Druid. Doesn't want that on the table. Back to Austin Collins. He's going to untap. Kind of. He said Merfolk Branchwalker's attacking. We all know that. Let's leave it tapped. Get it in there for 3, and Jim falls to 11. Austin tapping 3 more mana. Or is that 4 mana? 4 mana for a Crassus on 1. The rarely seen Crassus on 1, but honestly...
2.
I'm sorry, but one
card, 1
draw
life.
on 1 life, right. And honestly, It's not that bad. Like, that's a fine Magic card. It's not what you want out of this card. It's not what you put in your deck for. But as a fail state, it's acceptable, I think.
When you're playing against an opponent who just has a bunch of removal spells and not a whole lot else going on,
right?
Like Striped Bear is completely reasonable, and it sort of bridges the gap, helps you get to bigger Crassuses later.
Correct. Yeah, and we see Jim fire off a shock at the Crassus. He's had enough of that. Then Goblin Chain Whirler is going to come down and do a little damage to Austin Collins. Look to hold the fort on the ground and keep that Merfolk Branchwalker from its permanent attacking state that it was previously using. Austin really looking for a payoff for all this mana he's accumulated now.
Yeah, likely maybe not kicking himself for bidding the Vivian on turn 2, maybe wanting to kick his deck for serving up a bunch of lands after that.
Right. Yeah, never blame yourself when you can blame your deck. That's just good magic.
Oh, yeah.
Magic 101.
But yeah, he definitely needs to do something, try and close out this game quickly before the treasure map transforms, starts drawing cards. Like, he's got a little bit of a buffer and can maybe get under Jim, just kind of functioning as a tempo deck.
Oh, so look at this. We have the Biogenic Ooze, and Jim has used up the shocks. Didn't have the shock here for that backbreaking play we previously talked about. Biogenic Ooze is going to put an ooze into play at the end of the turn, or excuse me, immediately at the end of the turn. It's going to make all the oozes bigger, including itself. That's a card that gets out of hand real quickly. Jim needs to find an answer.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how the ooze might not be the best in green mirrors, but against mid-range decks like Jim's, they don't have a lot of the Merfolk Branch Walker, Wild Growth Walker type of stuff to dominate the ground. So Biogenic Ooze is actually quite good here.
Yeah, and we talked about Austin needing some way to proactively spend mana. Does it get much better than Biogenic Ooze? You get good return there.
It's a good one, and you don't even necessarily need to draw spells at all for the rest of the game.
Right, but looking at Jim Davis's hand, it looks like we do have an answer for the Biogenic Ooze. I doubt that's going to live through this turn. It does not seem like a card that Jim Davis could beat if it remains on the battlefield. And there we go. We see the Lava Coil finally removing the ooze from the table.
So Jim doing a really good job of keeping his head above water, but he's kind of like a little bit behind if Austin finds anything to just get this Chain Whirler out of the way.
Well, there you go. Lava Coil off the top of Austin's deck, and there's 6 damage rumbling through. That's going to bring Jim to a precariously low life total. He's going to need to start putting himself back together again. We see an Angrath in hand. Not a card we've saw a lot of in the last standard format. Maybe it's time for Angrath to shine.
Well, it's cute. You have Blood Crypt now, so it makes casting Angrath and putting Angrath in a bunch of different decks a lot easier. And Angrath is also just quite good against Hydroid Crassus.
Correct, and I think that's one of the big upsides of Angrath and why I've heard a lot of people talk about it recently. Clean answer to Hydroid Crassus. No matter how big they are, Angrath can take them and throw them to the bin. And Jim is going to deploy Angrath. And why don't we go ahead and read Angrath? I feel like we haven't seen a lot of this in play. It is +1. Each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. -3. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. Gains haste. Sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step. It has converted mana cost 3 or less. Effective answer for Crassus, as we said. And then the -8. Basically, your opponent's probably dead. But it's not going to matter this game. Disdainful stroke from Austin Collins dealing with Angrath before it could get anything done.
Yeah, didn't necessarily think that one would be coming in, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, Jim is mostly trying to go over the top.
Right.
So he's going to have to play some big spells at some point in order to win, and this allows Austin to play out some smaller creatures and keep control of the battlefield.
And look who has decided to show up. It's Mrs. Crassus, commanding the respect, as always. 4/4 Flying Trampler. That also happened to draw 2 cards, gain 2 life when it came into play. Does it get any better? Not really. That's about as good as they come.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything that would be better than that.
Right. And guess what? It also finds you your next Crassus as well. So,
and a couple lands to help pump some mana into it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this card's going to be around a lot. Get used to Hydroid Crassus being in a lot of your games. Jim has a fine answer there in Skargan Hellkite, the 5/5 version, going to be able to block that Crassus for the time being. If he gets to untap with that, maybe he can find a proactive use for that mana. Maybe he's still got Status Statue in the deck and start taking down all these bigger bodies. We'll see. We'll see what Jim can convert this into.
Yeah, it's status on Skargan Hellkite is good. It is certainly a little bit worse than Chain Whirler, but it gets the job done.
It does.
It's functional.
It does, and it does it once it's on the battlefield. That's the main thing, right? You don't get stuck waiting all game with your Chain Whirler in hand. Skargan Hellkite can do its thing on the battlefield and then just get cashed in when the time comes. I'm sure it'll also be quite happy just to pick off that Branch Walker if it gets to untap as well. But yeah, I think I saw a glimpse of it. That's the Crassus again. That's a Mr. Crassus this time, I believe. Crassus can be all genders, if you did not know that. But this one's going to draw 2 cards, gain 2 life, and it's going to be a 5/5, meaning it's ready to rumble with that Hellkite. Jim drawing a Lava Coil for the turn. That Crassus critically out of range of the Lava Coil.
Still a perfectly good 4/4 as the target, though.
Oh, but Jim could also deal with the 5/5 by activating the Skargan Hellkite, bouncing some damage around, doing 1 to the 5/5 Crassus, and using the coil to finish it off if he's adamant he has to maintain the ability to block the smaller one.
Yeah, it's true. Then he's just dead to anything that removes a creature or adds some damage.
Right.
I think he's probably just better off playing Lava Coil and Rekindling Phoenix this turn.
Okay, let's see what he thinks. He agrees with you. He's going to play Lava Coil. There's Rekindling Phoenix. Jim kind of playing his cards with the air of a man who's not super confident he's going to make it through the next set of turns here. Austin has obviously gotten a lot of gas in the old hand. I see a lot of lands in that quick flash of his hand here. There's got to be something, right? Some kind of payoff. We see an Incubation Druid. That's not the best payoff.
Was that it? Was that what you thought was going to be the big finish?
That's not so good here on turn 8 or 9, wherever we're at now. I expected more. So maybe a window opening back up for Jim. Got to tell you, I would love that top deck status right now. It's dangerous. Although looking at Jim's battlefield, oh, he's got green to cast it. He's just fine. Yeah, we're dealing with a hybrid card on the front side, so no worries for Jim Davis.
Yep, can't cast Statue at the moment.
Well, you can cast Status, right? Status is the death touch side of things.
And the important side of things.
Right. The key combo piece in his red mid-range deck. Looks like just another Rekindling Phoenix, but he's holding ground right now. You got to think Austin's a little favored ripping off the top of his deck, but he's played a few Crassuses. There may not be that many more. How many are we dealing with total in Austin's list?
He has 3 total. He has 3 total Hydroid Crassus and 1 Biogenic Ooze.
I think all those creatures have been deployed at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's Crassus for 2, 4, and 5.
Right. And we saw the Ooze go as well, so...
3 Adonis Climb, though. It's a pretty nice one.
Yeah, if that has stayed in post-board, then that's probably what he's looking for, although... Again, Rekindling Phoenix can do a lot to hold the fort, although the trample ability of Hydroid Crassus could be critical there.
Yeah, trample's huge, and just being able to pump an unblocked creature, too, because at this point, Austin has enough things to just attack around Jim's creatures.
So we may be looking at our first Skargan Hellkite activation of the match now as Jim passes the turn. No cards in hand, treasure map on the table. We'll see what he wants to do here. Austin really wants those last few bombs in his deck to start floating their way to the top right now.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot left. I mean, from the list, there's 2 Carnage Tyrant, 3 Adonis Climb, 1 Vivian left over, but the majority of it is just like the small Explore creature package.
Right. Yeah, I think we might be looking at Jim turning the corner here, quite honestly. Jim going to activate Treasure Map on Austin's turn. He likes that better than taking care of that Merfolk Branch Walker. Going to do it on upkeep as well. Take another look.
I kind of like that because Jim has to get the map transformed as quickly as possible.
Right.
That would be the easiest way for him to claw back into the game, but it's also tough because you saw Austin doing a lot of math on his turn last turn.
Yeah.
So he was thinking about whether or not he could attack, and it looked like he couldn't. So it is very, very close, I think, for him before he can actually make an attack.
Well, Jim just deployed another Skargan Hellkite, his 3rd of the match, I believe, now, and hopefully that's making things a little bit safer on his side of the battlefield if you're a Jim Davis fan.
I mean, if I knew I was going to draw a 5/5 flyer, I would definitely be fine with scrying rather than killing a Branch Walker.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Jim getting paid off there for sure.
Jim knew. He felt it. He felt the heart of the cards.
It's like my deck is full of birds and dragons, you know?
Right,
We're gonna
right.
find
How bad
one.
could it be?
Yeah. Or status, too. That's also another incredibly live draw.
Absolutely. Austin, head in hand, looking a little befuddled right now, wondering how he can deal with this massive army of flying birds and dragons ready to spit fire at him the moment they can. And you see that treasure map is going to flip now. Source of card advantage online for Jim Davis.
Yeah, Treasure Cove already on the battlefield, too, so normally you have to wait a turn.
Not anymore. Not anymore. A lot of options opening up to Jim. I like this deck a lot. This Jund mid-range deck has been impressive in what I've seen thus far.
Yeah, there's a few different ways to build it. You have some good 2-drop options. Last season, Ben White's played Direfleet Daredevil as a
Right.
4 of in the main deck. 1 Goblin Crater Maker, I believe the card is called.
Correct.
And now you can play Rick's Matty Reveler as another solid 2 that also helps give you a little bit of card advantage against control like other grindy decks. And then, yeah, Skargan Hellkite or Siege Gang Commander at the top end. Your mana's good.
Yeah, those shock lands opened up a lot of possibilities here. Jim's going to have a think about what he wants to do with his turn here. Jerry, is it time for Jim to start thinking offense, or are we not there yet?
It depends. I mean, he has to be really sure that he can't just die on a counter swing from Austin.
Right. It's like Jim's going to tap 3 mana here. And Goblin Chain Whirler entering the battlefield again. Picking off one of the smaller branch walkers there, cleaning up the board a little bit. But Jim's got the numbers advantage now. 6 creatures to Austin's 5. Maybe starting to feel a little safer.
Yeah, it looks good for Jim now. It is certainly very tempting to try and hold on to that Chain Whirler to get status because you just win the game on the spot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Although, with the amount of mana available, he can kill 4 creatures currently if he draws status using Skargan Hellkite.
That is true.
Pretty functionally similar.
I imagine that he will end up cashing in some of those treasures to draw cards, and it might be a while before he actually finds the status.
Fair enough.
But
fair enough.
It's only a matter of time for sure until Jim finds that card or something to remove the Crassus or some of the smaller creatures and make some attacks profitable for him. And this is kind of a lesson for anyone who's trying to build or play a Simic style of deck. Is like you need a way to get through these stalls and close the game. And I think Austin's done a good job of building his deck with that in mind, added 3 Crassus and the Hadana's Climbs and stuff. But sometimes the games get to this point and you just need a finisher. So this is why a lot of the Sultai decks are just playing all 4 Crassus.
Yeah, and I think rightfully so. So Jim's going to cash in a few of those treasures. Uh-oh. Did you see his draw?
We drew a split card.
Yeah, it's a status statue, and Jim doesn't have to do anything quite yet.
Trigger on the stack.
There we go. That's got to be game, right? That'll do. Yeah, that's why you play this combination, Jerry.
Yeah.
That's the type of impact this card can make single-handedly winning the game. Granted, Jim was turning the corner anyway, right?
He was.